6 inches apart and about 8 inches above the floor. The chief difficulty was that the head was somewhat higher than the feet, which caused the body constantly to slip down. Being slung to the same rails, when one man moved, no matter how slightly, the rest was set rocking, and whenever I dozed, somebody was sure to struggle back to the position from which he had slipped and arouse me again. Many hours passed before I won to sleep. It was only 7 in the evening, and the voices of children in shrill outcry, playing in the street, continued till nearly midnight. The smell was frightful and sickening, while my imagination broke loose and my skin crept and crawled till I was nearly frantic. Grunting, groaning, and snoring arose like the sounds emitted by some sea monster, and several times, afflicted by nightmare, one or another, by his shrieks and yells, aroused the lot of us. Toward morning I was awakened by a rat or some similar animal on my breast. In the quick transition from sleep to waking, before I was completely myself, I raised a shout to wake the dead. At any rate I woke the living, and they cursed me roundly for my lack of manners. But morning came, with a 6 o'clock breakfast of bread and skilly, which I gave away, and we were told off to our various tasks. Some were set to scrubbing and cleaning, others to picking oakum, and 8 of us were convoyed across the street to the Whitechapel Infirmary, where we were set at scavenger work. This was the method by which we paid for our skilly and canvas, and I, for one, know that I paid in full many times over. Though we had most revolting tasks to perform, our allotment was considered the best, and the other men deemed themselves lucky in being chosen to perform it. "Don't touch it, mate. The nurse says it's deadly," warned my working partner, as I held open a sack into which he was emptying a garbage can. It came from the sick wards, and I told him that I purposed neither to touch it nor to allow it to touch me. Nevertheless, I had to carry the sack, and other sacks, down 5 flights of stairs, and empty them in a receptacle, where the corruption was speedily sprinkled with strong disinfectant. Perhaps there is a wise mercy in all this. These men of the spike, the peg, and the street are encumbrances. They are of no good or use to anyone, nor to themselves. They clutter the earth with their presence, and are better out of the way. Broken by hardship, ill-fed, and worse nourished, they are always the first to be struck down by disease, as they are likewise the quickest to die. They feel themselves that the forces of society tend to hurl them out of existence. We were sprinkling disinfectant by the mortuary when the dead wagon drove up, and 5 bodies were packed into it. The conversation turned to the white potion and black jack, and I found they were all agreed that the poor person, man or woman, who in the infirmary gave too much trouble or was in a bad way, was polished off. That is to say, the incurables and the obstreperous were given a dose of black jack or the white potion and sent over the divide. It does not matter in the least whether this be actually so or not. The point is, they have the feeling that it is so, and they have created the language with which to express that feeling. Black jack, white potion, polishing off. At 8 o'clock we went down into a cellar under the infirmary, where tea was brought to us, and the hospital scraps. These were heaped high on a huge platter in an indescribable mess. Pieces of bread, chunks of grease and fat pork, the burnt skin from the outside of roasted joints, bones, in short, all the leavings from the fingers and mouths of the sick ones suffering from all manner of diseases. Into this mess the men plunged their hands, digging, pouring, turning over, examining, rejecting and scrambling for. It wasn't pretty. Pigs couldn't have done worse. But the poor devils were hungry, and they ate ravenously of the swill. And when they could eat no more, they bundled what was left into their handkerchiefs and thrust it inside their shirts. "Once, when I was here before, what did I find out there but a whole lot of pork ribs?" said Ginger to me. By "out there" he meant the place where the corruption was dumped and sprinkled with strong disinfectant. "They was a prime lot, no end of meat on 'em, and I had 'em into my arms and was out the gate and down the street a-looking for someone to give 'em to. Couldn't see a soul, and I was running round clean crazy, the bloke running after me and thinking I was slinging my hook, running away. But just before he got me, I got an old woman and poked him into her apron." O charity, O philanthropy, descend to the spike and take a lesson from Ginger. At the bottom of the abyss he performed as purely an altruistic act as ever was performed outside the abyss. It was fine of Ginger, and if the old woman caught some contagion from the no end o' meat on the pork ribs, it was still fine, though not so fine. But the most salient thing in this incident, it seems to me, is poor Ginger, clean crazy at sight of so much food going to waste. It is the rule of the casual ward that a man who enters must stay 2 nights and a day, but I had seen sufficient for my purpose, had paid for my skilly and canvas, and was preparing to run for it. "Come on, let's sling it," I said to one of my mates, pointing toward the open gate through which the dead wagon had come. "And get 14 days?" "No, get away." "Ah, I come here for a rest," he said complacently, "and another night's kip won't hurt me none." They were all of this opinion, so I was forced to sling it alone. "You can't ever come back here again for a doss," they warned me. "No fear," said I, with an enthusiasm they could not comprehend, and dodging out the gate I sped down the street. Straight to my room I hurried, changed my clothes, and less than an hour from my escape, in a Turkish bath, I was sweating out whatever germs and other things had penetrated my epidermis, and wishing that I could stand a temperature of 320 rather than 220. End of chapter 9.